I don't know why I'm writing this. Maybe it's because I can't sleep. Maybe it's because I need to get it off my chest. Maybe it's because I hope someone will read this and help me. But I doubt anyone will. No one ever does. I've been living in this apartment for 6 months. It's a cheap rundown place in a bad neighborhood. The walls are thin, the windows are cracked, the plumbing is leaky. But it's all I can afford. I work as a cashier at a convenience store, barely making enough to pay the rent and buy some food. I don't have any friends, any family, any hobbies. I don't have a life. I just exist. But I'm not alone. There's something else in this apartment. Something that watches me, follows me, torments me. Something that wants to hurt me. Something that wants to kill me. It started the first night I moved in. I was lying in bed, trying to fall asleep, when I heard a faint scratching sound from the closet. I ignored it, thinking it was a mouse or a rat. But the scratching got louder and louder, until it sounded like nails on a chalkboard. I got up and opened the closet door, expecting to see a rodent. But there was nothing there. Just an empty space, filled with darkness. I closed the door and went back to bed, thinking it was my imagination. But as soon as I lay down, the scratching started again. And this time, it was accompanied by a low, raspy voice. Let me out. Let me out. Let me out. I jumped out of bed and turned on the light, hoping to see the source of the voice. But there was nothing there. Just the closet door, slightly ajar. I ran to the door and slammed it shut, locking it with a chair. I grabbed my phone and called the landlord, hoping he would answer. But he didn't. He never does. I spent the rest of the night awake, listening to the scratching and the voice. They didn't stop until dawn. And that was just the beginning. Every night, it's the same. The scratching and the voice. Sometimes, they change. Sometimes, they say my name. Sometimes, they say things like, I see you, or, I'm coming for you, or, you're going to die. Sometimes, they laugh. A horrible, mocking laugh. I've tried everything to make them stop. I've tried earplugs, headphones, music, TV, anything to drown them out. But they always find a way to get through. They always find a way to make me hear them. I've tried to move out, to find another place. But I can't. I don't have the money, the credit, the references. No one will take me. No one will help me. I've tried to tell someone, to ask for help. But no one believes me. They think I'm crazy, paranoid, delusional. They think I'm making it up. They think I'm lying. But I'm not. I'm telling the truth. There's something in the closet. Something evil. Something that wants me dead. And I think it's getting out. Last night, I heard something different. Something new. Something worse. I heard the closet door open. I heard footsteps on the floor. I heard breathing in my ear. I heard a whisper. I'm here. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to stop it. I don't know how to survive. I don't know if I'll make it through the night. I don't know if anyone will read this. I don't know if anyone will care. But if you do, please help me. Please save me. Please. In the heart of a forgotten town, where the sun seldom shone, and the laughter of children was a distant memory, lived a man named Edgar. Edgar was not an ordinary man. He was the last resident of this desolate town, a place consumed by melancholy and despair. Edgar's days were monotonous, filled with the same routine. He would wake up to the sound of his own heartbeat echoing in the silence, make a cup of bitter coffee, and sit by the window, staring at the empty streets. The buildings, once full of life, now stood as hollow shells, their windows like vacant eyes staring back at him. The town had not always been this way. It was once a bustling place, filled with laughter and joy. But a series of unfortunate events, one after the other, had driven its residents away. A devastating flood, a deadly disease, a brutal war. Each event took away a piece of the town, and with it, a piece of Edgar. Edgar was not always alone. He had a family, friends, a life. But they were all gone now. His wife, Amelia, had been the first to go. She was taken by the disease that swept through the town like a plague. His children, Lily and Sam, had left the town in search of a better life. His friends had either moved away or perished in the war. Now, Edgar was alone. Alone in a town that was a ghost of its former self. Every day, he would walk the empty streets, hoping to see a familiar face, hear a familiar voice. But all he was met with was silence. The nights were the hardest. The silence would be broken by the howling of the wind, the creaking of the old buildings, the distant hooting of an owl. Edgar would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind filled with memories of the past. Memories of laughter, of love, of loss. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, Edgar's hope began to fade. The town was dying, and with it, so was he. He could feel himself becoming a part of the town, his life force seeping away into the cracks in the pavement, the rotting wood of the buildings, the stale air. One day, Edgar woke up and realized he could no longer remember the sound of his children's laughter, the warmth of his wife's touch, the taste of his mother's cooking. He was losing himself, becoming a ghost in a town full of ghosts. And so, Edgar made a decision. He would leave the town, venture out into the world, in search of something, anything, that could fill the void in his heart. He packed a small bag, took one last look at the town, and set off. But as he walked away from the town, he felt a strange sensation. A pull, a tug, a force drawing him back. He turned around, and there it was. The town, his town, glowing in the soft light of the setting sun. It was beautiful, in its own desolate, melancholy way. And in that moment, Edgar realized something. The town was a part of him, just as he was a part of it. He could no more leave it than he could stop his own heart from beating. With a heavy heart, he turned back and walked towards the town. As he walked the empty streets, he felt a strange sense of peace. Yes, the town was desolate. Yes, it was filled with melancholy and despair. But it was his town. His home. And he would not abandon it. And so, Edgar continues to live in the desolate town, alone but not lonely. He has found a strange comfort in the melancholy, a strange peace in the despair. He is a part of the town, and the town is a part of him. And in that, he has found a sense of belonging. A sense of home. I've always been a skeptic of the paranormal, but ever since my wife and I moved to this remote cabin in the countryside, we've been experiencing some strange things. It started small. We'd hear footsteps outside at night, even though we knew we were the only ones living in the area. We'd find strange animal tracks in the snow, even though we didn't recognize any of them. And sometimes, we'd hear a low growling sound coming from the woods behind our house. At first, we tried to ignore it. We figured it was just wild animals or our imaginations getting the better of us. But then, the activity started to escalate. One night, I woke up to find my wife standing at the foot of the bed, staring out the window. She was wide awake, but she didn't seem to notice me. She was just staring out into the darkness, her eyes fixed on something. "What's wrong?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just kept staring. I got out of bed and went over to her. I put my hand on her shoulder, and she turned to look at me. Her eyes were wide with fear. "What is it?" I asked again. "I saw it," she whispered. "I saw the creature." I didn't know what to say. I just held her close. "It was big," she said. "And black. And it had glowing red eyes." I tried to reassure her that it was probably just her imagination, but I knew she was telling the truth. She had seen something. After that night, the activity got even worse. We'd hear things scratching at the windows at night. We'd find strange objects scattered around the yard. And sometimes, we'd even see the creature out of the corner of our eyes. It was starting to take a toll on our marriage. My wife was constantly on edge, and I was starting to worry about her sanity. I knew we had to do something. I started doing some research on the local legends and folklore. I learned about a creature called a Wendigo. It was said to be a malevolent spirit that inhabited the deep woods. It was said to be a shapeshifter, but it was most commonly described as a tall, thin creature with glowing red eyes. Everything matched up. I was sure that whatever was haunting us was a Wendigo. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to stop it. I just knew that I had to protect my wife and our unborn child. One night, I was sitting on the porch, keeping watch. I heard a noise coming from the woods behind the house. I got up and went to investigate. I saw the Wendigo standing in the shadows. It was even bigger and more terrifying than I had imagined. Its glowing red eyes stared into mine, and I felt a wave of terror wash over me. I knew that I couldn't fight it. I knew that the only way to protect my wife and child was to run. I ran back to the house and slammed the door shut. I locked all the doors and windows, and I barricaded the doors with furniture. I woke up my wife and told her what had happened. She was terrified, but she knew that we had to do whatever it took to protect ourselves. We stayed up all night, listening to the Wendigo scratching at the windows and trying to break in. But we held on. We survived the night. The next morning, we packed up our things and left the cabin. We drove back to the city, and we never looked back. I know that some people may not believe my story, but I know what I saw. And I know that what we experienced was real. The Wendigo is out there. It's lurking in the deep woods, waiting for its next victim. Epilogue. My wife and I had a baby boy a few months after we left the cabin. He's a healthy, happy child, and he's the light of our lives. But I still think about the Wendigo sometimes. I wonder if it's still out there, waiting for us. I wonder if it will ever come back. I hope not. But if it does, we'll be ready for it. I never thought our honeymoon would end like this. We had planned everything so carefully, so perfectly. A week on yacht, sailing around the Pacific Ocean, just the two of us. No phones, no internet, no distractions. Just love, sun, and sea. We had rented the yacht from a friendly old man named Captain Jack, who had assured us it was in good condition and had everything we needed. He had also given us a map of the best spots to visit and a radio in case of emergencies. He had warned us, though, to avoid a certain area marked with a red X. He said it was dangerous and that there were strange things lurking in the water there. He didn't elaborate, but his tone was serious enough to make us heed his advice. We had a wonderful time for the first few days, exploring the islands, snorkeling, fishing, and making love. We felt like we were in paradise, and nothing could ruin our happiness. Until that night. It was our last night on the yacht, and we decided to celebrate with a bottle of champagne and a romantic dinner on the deck. We watched the sunset, and then the stars, and then we cuddled under a blanket. We were about to go inside when we heard a splash. We looked over the railing and saw something in the water. It was dark, but we could make out a shape. It looked like a large seal, but with a long furry tail. It had a round head with small ears and eyes, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. It was staring at us, and it made a sound that chilled our blood. It was a cross between a growl and a scream, and it echoed in the night. We were frozen in fear, unable to move or speak. The creature swam closer, and then it leaped out of the water, landing on the deck with a thud. It was bigger than we had thought, at least 6 feet long and 300 pounds. It had claws on its flippers and scales on its belly. It was a monster, and it was angry. It lunged at us, snapping its jaws. We barely dodged it and ran to the cabin. We slammed the door behind us and locked it. We heard the creature banging on the door, trying to break it down. We grabbed the radio and tried to call for help. But there was no answer. We were alone, and we were doomed. We looked around and saw a window. Maybe we could escape through it and swim to the nearest island. It was a long shot, but it was our only chance. We decided to go for it. We opened the window and jumped into the water. We swam as fast as we could, hoping the creature wouldn't follow us. But we were wrong. We heard it splash behind us, and then we felt it grab our legs. It pulled us under, and we screamed. We felt its teeth sink into our flesh, and we knew it was over. We looked into each other's eyes and said goodbye. We loved each other, and we died together. That's how our honeymoon ended. That's how we met the Stellar's sea ape. That's how we became its prey. A sleepy little town on the banks of the Little Miami River. But beneath its tranquil surface, something dark and sinister lurks. A slimy bipedal amphibian roaming the state of Ohio. Sarah and I had just arrived in Loveland for our honeymoon. It was a beautiful sunny day, not a cloud in the sky. We were excited to explore the town and its many mysteries, including the Loveland cryptid local legends. On our first night in Loveland, we decided to take a walk through the park. It was a warm summer night, and the air was filled with the sounds of crickets and owls. As we walked, we felt a sense of unease. It was as if we were being watched. Suddenly, we heard a noise behind us. We turned around and saw a dark figure standing in the shadows. It was tall and thin, with glowing red eyes. We froze in terror. The figure stared at us for a moment, then it opened its mouth and let out a deafening roar. The sound was so loud that it felt like it was going to pierce our eardrums. We turned and ran, but the creature was too fast. It chased us through the woods, its glowing red eyes following us in the dead of night. We could hear its footsteps getting closer and closer. Every step we heard was nauseating. The sound of wet mud between your toes, but with a slight squelching and croaking noise. The sound only grew in intensity with every step. Slap. Squelch. Croak. Slap, squelch, croak. Slap, squelch, croak. We were running as fast as we could, but it wasn't enough. The creature caught up to us and grabbed Sarah by the arm. She screamed in terror. I turned to fight the grotesque monster, but it was too strong. It knocked me to the ground and pinned me down with its smarmy wet digits, dripping with a putrid stench burning through my skin. I looked up at Sarah and saw that this thing was lifting her up into the air. It opened its mouth wide and prepared to swallow her. I screamed in desperation. Suddenly, a bright light filled the woods. The creature dropped Sarah and let out a horrific squelch of pain. The light got brighter and brighter. Blinded by it, we shielded our eyes with our arms, hoping it was all just a bad dream. When we finally opened our eyes again, it was only us left. The creature disappeared into dense underbrush. We stood up and looked at each other. We were both shaking with fear. "What was that?" Sarah asked. "I don't know," I said, "but it saved our lives." We never found out what the bright light was, but we'll always be grateful to it for saving us from the Loveland creature. We went back to our hotel and checked out the next morning. We didn't even stop to say goodbye to Loveland. We just wanted to get out of there as fast as we could. But we couldn't shake the feeling that the Loveland freak of nature was still out there, watching us. Epilogue. Sarah and I went back to our normal lives, but we could never forget our encounter with the Loveland creature. It had changed us forever. We became more withdrawn and reclusive. We didn't like to go out at night anymore, and we were always on edge. We knew that what we saw was real, and we knew that it was out there, somewhere. One day, I was walking home from work when I saw the Loveland frog standing in the shadows across the street. It was staring at me with its glowing red eyes. I froze in terror. The Loveland monster smiled, a cruel, twisted smile. Then it turned and disappeared into the night. I ran all the way home, and I didn't look back. I told Sarah what I had seen, but she didn't believe me. She said that I was just imagining things. But I knew what I had seen. I had seen the Loveland frogman. 10 years later. Sarah and I have been married for 10 years now. We have 2 beautiful children, a boy and a girl. We've tried to put our encounter with the Loveland frogman behind us, but it's always there, lurking in the shadows of our minds. One day, our son was playing in the backyard when he came running to us, screaming. He said that he had seen a monster in the woods. We went to investigate, but we couldn't find anything. We told our son that it was probably just his imagination. But we knew better. The Loveland frog monster is still out there. And it's watching us.